The city that never sleeps began to dread the falling of the night. It was the summer of 1976, and New York City was a tinderbox of tension. A sprawling, sweating metropolis in the grip of a financial crisis, its streets simmering with a unique brand of urban anxiety. But a different kind of heat was coming. A darkness was gathering in the outer boroughs, in the quiet, tree-lined neighborhoods of the Bronx and Queens, where life unfolded on stoops and in parked cars. It was in these intimate, vulnerable spaces that a story would begin. A story not of a city, but of a monster who claimed he was taking his orders from a demon. It began with a sound. Not a scream, but the sharp, flat crack of a .44 caliber. On July 29, 1976, Donna Loria and Jody Valenti were sitting in a car outside Donna's home in the Bronx, talking about their evening. It was a scene repeated on thousands of streets across the city, a moment of youthful normalcy. Then a figure approached, a man. He raised a gun. 2 shots. Donna was killed instantly, Jody wounded. The attack was so swift, so brutal, so seemingly random, that it felt less like a murder and more like a lightning strike from a clear sky. The police had a file, a victim, a shell casing, but they had no motive, no suspect, no context for the violence. It was an isolated tragedy, or so they thought. The city, preoccupied with its own survival, barely noticed. But the man with the gun noticed. He was watching. He was waiting. Months passed. The leaves turned and fell. Then, on October 23rd in Flushing, Queens, the lightning struck again. Carl Denaro and Rosemary Keenan were in a car when a window exploded. A single, precise shot. Denaro was gravely wounded, a fragment of bullet tearing into his skull. He survived, but the message was becoming clearer. This was no coincidence. The shell casings matched. The target was the same. Young women or couples in cars at night. The pattern was a ghastly secret, known only to a terrified few and the hunter who was stalking them. The hunter, however, was growing bolder. On November 26th, 2 high school students, Donna DeMasi and Joanne Lamino, were walking home after seeing a movie. They were on a sidewalk, under a street lamp, steps from Joanne's door. They heard footsteps, then a voice. They turned. There was no demand for money, no lewd comment, just the flash of a gun and the roar that shattered the quiet night. Both girls were shot. Joanne Lamino was paralyzed for life. The terror, once confined to the interior of automobiles, was now spilling out onto the pavement. It was spreading. The winter offered a false respite, a chilling quiet. The investigation, now a multi-precinct effort, was going nowhere. Leads evaporated. Witness descriptions were vague. A man, average build, dark hair, a ghost. The press had yet to give the story a name, but in the silence, the fear grew roots. Parents kept their children closer. Lovers glanced over their shoulders. Every shadow in a rearview mirror was a potential omen. Then, in the spring of 1977, the ghost found a voice. On March 8th, Virginia Vuskarikian, a brilliant Columbia University student, was walking home from class in broad daylight. She was shot in the face at point-blank range and killed. The city was jolted awake. This was different. This was a brazen, daytime attack on a busy street. The .44 caliber killer, as the papers now called him, was evolving, his confidence metastasizing. The NYPD formed the now famous Omega Task Force, a massive, dedicated team of detectives, working around the clock. But they were chasing a phantom, and the phantom was watching them. He moved through the city like a virus, a part of the crowd yet utterly separate from it. He was David Berkowitz, a 24-year-old postal worker, a quiet man who lived in a small, cluttered apartment in Yonkers. To his neighbors he was unremarkable, a loner who sometimes muttered to himself. They didn't see the rage festering inside him, a rage he would later claim was planted and nurtured by a demon. On April 17th, the demon demanded another sacrifice. Valentina Siriani and Alexander Esau were parked on a quiet street in the Bronx, dreaming of a future they would never see. Berkowitz walked up to their car and fired not once, but multiple times, a frenzied attack that left them both dead. And then, he did something that would change the entire complexion of the case. He left a letter. It was a rambling, handwritten note, tucked into a sealed envelope. The police found it a few feet from the car. It began with the words that would echo through the summer and become etched in the annals of American crime. I am the son of Sam. I am a little brat. The letter was a chaotic mix of grandiosity and self-loathing. It spoke of his father, Sam, who drank blood. It promised more killing, more terror. It was a direct communication, a taunt. The son of Sam was not just a killer, he was a storyteller, and he was writing his bloody narrative for the entire city to read. The city descended into full-blown panic. The summer of 1977 became the summer of Sam. Disco anthems blared from radios, but underneath the beat was a pulse of pure fear. Women with long brown hair, his stated preference, cut it short or wore wigs. Police checkpoints sprouted across the Bronx and Queens. The sound of a backfiring car was enough to send people diving for cover. The tabloids feasted on the story, printing every rumor, every theory. The Omega Task Force was inundated with thousands of tips, a tidal wave of misinformation and desperation. They were looking for a needle in a burning haystack. Berkowitz, empowered by his newfound infamy, wrote more letters to the press, to the famous columnist Jimmy Breslin. His words were dissected by psychiatrists and detectives alike. He was a cult leader without a cult, a celebrity of carnage, and through it all the attacks continued. On June 26th, he shot Judy Placido and Salvatore Lupo as they sat in their car after a disco night. Miraculously, both survived. The pressure on the police was immense. Crushed, the city was holding its breath, waiting for the next headline, the next flash of gunfire. It came on the sweltering night of July 31st. Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Violante were on a first date, parked under a street lamp in Brooklyn. For the first time, the killer had crossed the bridge into a new borough. The rules had changed again. He fired 4 shots through the windshield. Stacy died. Robert survived but was permanently blinded. The city's collective nerve broke. This was no longer a series of crimes. It was a siege. But that night, the siege nearly ended. A woman named Cecilia Davis was walking her dog near the scene and saw a man hurrying away. She saw him toss something into the storm drain. She saw his face. More crucially, a few blocks away, a couple sitting in their car noticed a man acting strangely near a parked car. They saw him get in and drive off. They took down the license plate 561 XLB. It was a thread, a single fragile thread in a tapestry of chaos. The plate was traced to a Ford Galaxy, registered to David Berkowitz at 35 Pine Street, Yonkers. For days the name meant nothing. He wasn't in any database, on any list. He was a ghost with a parking ticket. On the night of August 10th, 1977, a team of detectives and officers descended on the Yonkers address. They found the car. It was ticketed for being parked too close to a fire hydrant. As they were examining it, a man walked casually out of the apartment building and towards the vehicle. He was heavy-set, with disheveled hair. He was carrying a paper bag. One of the detectives, Bill Clark, drew his revolver. David Berkowitz stopped. He looked at the circle of armed men. For a fleeting moment, there was silence. Then he dropped the bag. Inside was the .44 caliber Bulldog revolver, loaded and ready. "Okay," he said, his voice calm, eerily resigned. "You got me." The siege was over. The ghost had been made flesh. In custody, the story he told was even more bizarre than the letters had suggested. He claimed he wasn't acting alone. He said he was part of a satanic cult. He said the orders came from a man named Sam, his 6,000-year-old demon father, who spoke to him through the barking of a neighbor's black Labrador retriever, Harvey. He was a pawn, a soldier in a war against humanity. It was a narrative of supernatural possession, a desperate attempt to abdicate responsibility for the sheer mundane horror of his actions. The legal process was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Ballistic matches, eyewitness identifications, his own confession. David Berkowitz pleaded guilty to all the shootings and was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences, 3 to 55 years in prison. The city exhaled. The nightmare was officially over. But in the quiet that followed, questions lingered like a stubborn fog. Were the demonic commands merely the elaborate delusions of a deeply disturbed mind, a constructed fantasy to justify his rage? Or was there a sliver of truth to his claims of a larger conspiracy? The official record states that David Berkowitz acted alone, a lone wolf driven by his own internal pathologies. Yet the legend of the Son of Sam endures, not just because of the terror he inflicted, but because of the unsettling ambiguity he left behind. Today, David Berkowitz remains in a New York State prison, an old man now, a born-again Christian, who claims to have found redemption. He has renounced his demonic explanations, calling them lies, but the echoes of that summer still whisper through the streets of New York. They are in the stories told by survivors, in the memories of those who were lost, and in the chilling understanding that sometimes the most ordinary of faces can conceal a darkness so profound, so inexplicable, that it can hold an entire city hostage. The Son of Sam was a man, but he became a monster, and in doing so, he held up a mirror to a city and to a world that was terrified to see what looked back.